We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered, and no further big purchases. So how's Daisy doing? I'll ask that.
She's great.
She's doing okay.
She's great. She's fantastic. Yes, she has
Good to hear.
She's 100%. She's been she's gone on a couple of road trips with me, taking her out a little bit, take her to work a couple of times, just when I knew I wasn't going to be there very long. So it's been nice.
Okay. Just in case some folks are tuning in, Daisy is Tom's pretty new, still very much a baby pet lizard.
Yeah, so bearded dragon. She is about 7 months old or so. She's got a ways to go before she's full grown, but she's trying. She's trying. So,
all right.
She did manage to crawl all the way up onto my head while I was doing dishes the other night, which I felt was a dangerous position for her, but I applauded her effort to get up there. All right, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You go to www.avrant.com. Leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast, where you are most likely to get a very quick response. YouTube.com/c/AVRant for our videos. You can leave a comment, but we will probably ignore you. Let me see. I guess if you want to contact us directly, you can email rob@avrant.com. His Twitter is @FirstReflect. Are you still tweeting about So You Think I Can Dance or whatever?
Well, not right now, because the season ended a little while back.
It's still a thing? It's still a thing?
I don't know if it's coming back for another season or not. Do not know.
All right. Anyways, that's one of Rob's favorite shows, so if you don't want to hear about that, you can go to my Twitter. Well, you can email me directly, tom@avrant.com. My Twitter is @avrant_Tom, where the only thing you'll find on my Twitter account currently is the podcast. So that's the only thing that ever gets posted there. We have our producer, Austin. Austin has his own Twitter. I mean, if you want to email him, it's just question@avrant.com. He helps curate the question list along with Rob. And Austin also has his Twitter account @Austin, TEN Pond. Austin. He has his own podcast, We Watch Movies podcast. So, do we have any?
Wait a second. What?
I know. I'm done. It's been going on for like a year.
More than a year.
It's been going on for. It's got to be more than a year at this point, right? I've been saying that.
We can't let our running gag die like that, so unceremoniously.
I was just gonna let it fade out and hope nobody noticed.
Well, I'm gonna notice. Good grief!
The We Watch Movies podcast, so podcast about lining kitchen drawers and stuff,
drawers,
shelves,
and cabinets,
the shelf liners. They have some very strong opinions about whether or not you should use the sticky stuff or not, and they test all the different lining materials, which I found very helpful because I did not realize that there was some that performed so much better than others. So I listened to it a couple times, and they gave out some pretty good suggestions. So the We Watch Movies podcast about lining your drawers and shelves.
Yeah, We Watch Movies. What else would it be?
What else would it be?
Very descriptive. Don't need any sort of tagline in the description.
Nope. I was told that my audio got quieter last week, so I have no idea why that is. Could be that my microphone is finally dying after 10 plus years.
I don't think so. No, I think
okay.
it was
Believe
actually,
it or not,
I think
I
it was
still have
just
another one.
The voice. The voice was getting quieter.
Oh, I was
fading.
I've been really tired, man. This weather, the cooler weather really takes it out of me, just in general. But I also have. It's just Mondays. Mondays are so hard.
Well, it wasn't Monday last week, but same thing.
Well, anyway, it was the same thing. Yeah. All right. So, I guess we don't have anything personal to discuss this week. It feels weird. It feels weird not to have some sort of story to share.
I did some testing on my system thanks to one of the questions, but I'll address that when we get to
the
it.
questions.
Yeah.
I watched It. I told you last week?
Last week, yeah. Did you get through the rest of it, though? You said you fell asleep.
I fell asleep, and then I took the movie back to Redbox. I also I watched Captain America Civil War again. on Blu-ray, which was very nice.
So if you fell asleep before the end, you didn't even get to see Pennywise the Dancing Clown actually dance.
I don't think I saw that.
That was a highlight. Didn't get to see that
part. Whatever. All right. We're going to start, as we do every podcast, with thanking our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, all you have to do is support the podcast. One way you can support the podcast is by going to patreon.com/AVRant podcast, where you can, basically it's like a monthly subscription thing where you can pledge as little as $1 or as much as $1 bajillion, I suppose, though I don't think anybody has ever done that. You can, and it takes that amount out of your account every week and sends it to us, or at least some portion of it to us. Every month, and sends it to us. So we have 53 patrons that we want to thank this week, including Patrick, who Patrick was the one who noticed the spelling error on Patreon that I had in the thank you notice. So thank you for that. I fixed it today. In fact, right before this podcast.
Excellent.
I think. And there's the other way that you can support the podcast monetarily, at least, is go to www.avrant.com and click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, which takes you to a PayPal donation site, which you can donate directly. All these monies go into our coffers to help pay for our hosting fees and shipping costs if we have to ship anything, occasionally program upgrades and that sort of thing. One of these days I'm going to have to buy a Reaper, which is the audio program I've been using for like a year. That's still in the evaluation phase. Apparently I'm still evaluating it, but that sort of thing. So thank you to our patrons, especially Patrick, and for everybody else, thank you as well.
Yeah, big thanks to all our patrons over there at Patreon. Nice to see that number tick up once again. And Patrick, thanks for signing up. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Heath supported the podcast in a different way. He let Soundproofing Company know that he heard about them from us. Heath has been working with Ted White. Am I supposed to know who that is?
He's the founder of Soundproofing Company.
All right, then. Heath has found him to be extremely knowledgeable, but his recommendations do tend to be all or nothing, which I find to be true of many people in this world, not just of owners of company. Nevertheless, thanks to Ted, Heath was able to have his contractor make some changes that will hopefully result in the level of sound isolation he was hoping for. Robert went to an SVS Live event where they're showing off their newest products. He got to talk to Gary Yakubian in person, and Robert brought up AVRant. Gary had nothing but nice things to say about us.
Yay!
Yay. And Robert is hoping we might do another interview in the not-too-distant future. We are as well. And Justin tweeted SVS to let him know that his SB4000, is that a thing?
Yes, that's what replaced the Ultra 13 series. It's now the 4000.
Subwoofer purchase was an AVRant suggestion, and I guess we're also thanking all of our new YouTube subscribers. Do we have 1,000 yet?
We don't have 1,000 yet. That's our target by February 20th, so that we can remain within the YouTube partnership program, which they dropped on all of us small channels, saying, hey, guess what? If you don't have 1,000 subscribers and 40,000 hours...
4,000. It's 4,000.
Hours. Okay, yeah, translating into minutes, but whatever. Yeah, if you don't have that, then, you're not going to be able to monetize, and we're going to take away some of the features that you're using before. So we're like, well, we already have enough views, so it'd be really nice if we could get to 1,000, even if that means, so last week we had under 600. Now we got like over 100 new subscribers.
In quotes, in air quotes.
Just since last week. So huge thank you.
One of them was me. That's right. Was my personal account subscribed. So what does a subscription get for you? If you go to YouTube, we will be one of the recommended things that you see.
Your subscription.
In your subscription. That is literally all it is. I have channels that I have subscribed to years and years ago. I don't ever remember subscribing to them. I don't ever remember watching anything from that channel. But it's been I've been subscribed to them for years. I haven't watched it in a million years. It doesn't even pop up anymore as something recommended. So if you've got a couple of different Gmail addresses,
yes,
log in
please
on every Gmail address and just subscribe to the podcast. All we need, we're just gaming the system at this point.
A little bit.
Why?
Yeah.
We just just the features. We're not looking to monetize. I don't care about the only reason we monetize in the first place. If you go back and listen to the podcast from however long ago we started doing this, the only reason I monetize is because they made you monetize in order to get the features.
Right.
And the features were things like being able to post a video and set the time for it to go live. I mean, that's like basic features. That's not like we're not asking for scheduling things is not really something that should be required. But I had to monetize in order to do that. I don't want to be monetized. I'm not looking to make money off of YouTube. We're never going to make any money off of YouTube, and I'm fine with that. But I do want to have the features. So if you don't mind, in fact, I need to do that. I've got my kids have all got email addresses. My wife's got. I've got 3. So I need to go. I think I have 3.
So yeah,
I need to go. And,
we're putting a bit of a plea out there because we know not everybody is watching the YouTube, and that's fine. We don't expect anybody to, and thankfully it's not a need at this point. We have enough views, so it's really just about getting the subscriber number up. So we're hoping, since it doesn't cost anybody any money, it's a few clicks on your computer to get subscribed under however many Gmail addresses you have. That'd be fantastic. And thank you to everyone who already did, because that wasn't that many days ago, and that number jumped up by over 100. So that was nice to see.
Yeah. So thank you, Heath, Robert, and Justin, for talking us up to those different companies.
Yeah, Heath, Robert, Justin, thank you so much for supporting AVRant.
In the news, via Steve the Geek on Twitter, some folks over at AVS Forum have received the first Denon AVR X8500H units that were shipped this past week, unfortunately. They've tested and discovered that the Dolby Surround upmixer does not make use of the front wide speakers. The front wides remained silent when applying Dolby Surround, so it was a mistake in the manual. Which kind of sucks. Furthermore, the 11 speaker minimum limit when using DTS-X or DTS Neural X has been confirmed.
Maximum.
So there is simply, did I say minimum?
You said minimum, yeah.
Maximum. So there is simply no way to upmix to a 9.1.4 configuration. The Dolby Surround upmixer can do 7.1.6, and the DTS Neural X upmixer can do 7.1.4 using front wides instead of surround backs, but neither can do 9.1.4. Only actual Atmos soundtracks can do 9.1.4. Only actual Atmos soundtracks. What does that mean?
So, like, if you get a Blu-ray disc or an Ultra HD Blu-ray disc that actually has Dolby Atmos as the soundtrack.
Oh, then the front wides will the wides will work at that point.
They will, yes. So
so it's just the upmixers that don't work.
It's
not
upmixers. That's right.
I got it.
And the DTS Neural X upmixer does work with front wides. It's just that there's this 11 speaker maximum limit.
Okay.
So there's still no way to do 9.1.4, which would be 13 speakers, because it's limited to 11. So yes, the hope that some of us had that we'd be able to do a 9.1.4 configuration and use some upmixer to actually make that happen, not going to happen. However, I came up with one workaround, because before, the idea was, what if you wanted 9.1.6?
Right.
And the thought was, well, you could do 9.1.4 from the X8500H itself, and then add 2 more receivers, which would matrix the top middle speakers. They would take the top front and the top rear, and you would use Dolby Pro Logic processing to create what would normally be a center, but in this case it would be a top middle. But you'd need 2 of them, one for the left side, one for the right side. Well, instead of that, you could get one of the older AV receivers that still did front wides. So those are getting harder and harder to find, but you could do that. And then you could make the X8500H a 7.1.6 configuration. So that's doing the 6 overheads, and it's set up to do 7 regular bass layers. But then you could feed its Zone 2 output to your second AV receiver, the older one, the one that still did front wides, but couldn't do like 9.1.6 or 9.1.4 because it was limited to 11 speakers. But you could set that up to be 9.1.2. And now you could have discrete front wides. You could still do the DTS Neural X upmixer on the one that's doing the front wides, and you'd get 9.1.2 Neural X, and then you could, I guess, do Dolby Surround upmixer on the X8500H. So you'd be using both upmixers at the same time to get 9.1.6. There you go. But it's only 2 receivers. I cut down by 1 receiver, except you need an older, harder to find one, more expensive one. So it probably ends up being the same.
Yeah. Don't do that.
If you followed that, you're just as crazy as I am. And congratulations.
It's really not worth it. The Apple TV OS 11.3 beta firmware purportedly gets Dolby Vision working on Sony's X1 Extreme TV, so that's some good news on that front. Oppo says they're working on a firmware update, so hopefully Sony TV owners won't have to wait too much longer for Dolby Vision to finally work the way it should.
Yes.
which is good. Nintendo, because I guess it wasn't last week that Sony said basically we're ready. We just got to wait for everybody else to update their players.
Well, it was honestly it was kind of all on Dolby, because Dolby told Sony, well, here's the update for you. Sony didn't develop that firmware update to get Dolby Vision working. Dolby did that, and then they're like, oh, by the way, all the external sources need firmware updates now too. So yeah, there you go. But at least it's rolling out. That's good news.
So Nintendo announced their Nintendo Labo cardboard peripherals for the Switch, shipping April 20th and available for pre-order now. Labo will launch as Toy-Con 01 variety kit. I guess that's $70, and Toy-Con 02 robot kit, which is $80. I have a hard time paying $70 for and $80 for cardboard. Can we just start right there?
You are buying a game, so the game would normally be $60.
As well as customization sets that include stickers and stencils to decorate your cardboard creations. And each kit includes software plus the cardboard peripherals that you will punch out of the flat cardboard pieces and fold to construct things like a miniature piano, RC car, which works using the Joy-Con's HD rumble feature, a fishing rod, or the large robot suit with its backpack pulleys and headset.
This all cardboard. Well, the pulleys are string.
Yeah. But I don't know. Is this supposed to be good? Because it looks real dumb. I mean,
that's we wanted reactions. I mean, it's
that looks real stupid, man. This is like I mean, can you play the game without the cardboard? Because it's
you
cardboard.
Definitely can't use the piano without it. I mean, they're doing some kind of ingenious stuff. Because they're like,
I'm not saying it doesn't look ingenious. I'm saying that it's made out of cardboard.
It is made out of cardboard.
I mean, there are some pretty heavy-duty cardboards that are very resilient to things. But I've literally had fifth graders that I've taught who will be in tears because I'll ask them to fold a piece of paper, and they're like, I can't fold paper. Every time I fold paper, it rips. I'm like, how did you even get to that? How did you even get to that thought? And they're supposed to punch out cardboard here? I'm not saying that all of them are that... I'm not going to say what I'm going to think of that particular child, but that are that way. But they are, I mean, it's
well, I'm sure they're counting on... I mean, they did show individual packs. So, like, let's say you make your little cardboard piano, and then you break it because it's made out of cardboard. Well, they did show some like little individual packs where all you would buy is one cardboard peripheral to replace one that you might have broken. They're not going to force you to buy the entire variety pack over again.
Can I spend an extra $10 to get plastic, please, sir?
Yeah.
Can I? Where's that? Particle board barely costs more. I mean, ask IKEA. Particle board barely costs more than cardboard. Let's build it out of that so that maybe it's not...
profit margin, I'm sure.
I just hate this idea. I mean, I just hate it. I hate it. I hate it in the way that it's just like, here is a thing that is going to make your children cry until you buy another one. I mean, that's literally what this toy is.
It does seem as though they're very much hoping you will have to buy replacement pieces of cardboard.
It's like the loot boxes for Nintendo here. You know? It's that's... I can't emphasize how much I hate this idea.
I mean that robot, that backpack.
That's 5 minutes. That is 5 minutes. That thing has a half-life of 5 minutes. Within 5 minutes, half of the things out there will have been broken in some way.
But yes,
guaranteed.
The way that the piano works is kind of remarkable. So on the Joy-Con right, the Joy-Con that you would hold in your right hand, on the bottom of that, it's got a little IR camera, little infrared camera. And so the way that they made the piano work is, so you've got these little cardboard piano keys, 13 keys, and they work just like a little lever. Yeah. And inside the piano, which you can't really see in the image, but inside the piano on the end of the lever, there's like a little reflective piece of tape. So when you press the key, the lever goes up and the little piece of reflective tape, becomes visible. And the little infrared camera catches that because it's facing sideways on the side. And that's how they make the keys work. I mean, that's pretty clever. It's pretty smart because the infrared camera can actually sense depth. And then it can also sense the velocity, so it'll even change the volume based on how hard you press it and the quickness. So I don't know. I like some of the ideas. I agree. The cardboard it's bound to break.
It's just a money grab. I'm sorry, Nintendo.
They are a toy company.
Maybe it's going to be awesome, but really cardboard. You guys already thought, like, not even trying. Cheap plastic. At least when we first saw it, we would have thought, hey, maybe they'll hold up. It's plastic. It's cardboard. It's going to break. Some comments from our listeners. Dan has an update to his setup where he had a flat panel mounted over a fireplace on a mount that lets him pull the TV forward and down. He had upgraded to ELAC speakers, but the center didn't fit, so he had temporarily way off to the hand side.
Yeah.
The Revel C10 center that Rob recommended is a bit too expensive, so Dan is going to try a few different alternatives. He wasn't in love with his old Energy Take Classic center, and he's found that ELAC upgrade along with his new SVS subwoofer to be very enjoyable. But he could go back to that Energy center since it at least fits. He also has an old Bose VCS 10 center that would also fit, so he'll give that a try as well. He's mostly interested in the KEF T series though. While it won't quite fit on the mount attached to the TV itself, he does have just enough space to mount it directly onto the fireplace wall just above the fireplace, so that's his plan for now.
Yeah, so
okay.
Tom, you did
but
mention
isn't he going to pull that thing? Isn't he going to pull that thing down right in front of that speaker, though?
In front of the KEF T series, if he mounts it.
Yeah.
Well, that's what he's saying is that with the screen pulled down, there's still just enough room above the fireplace on the stone part, the stone surround of the fireplace, that he could mount the very thin KEF T series center right in that section. So it's on the wall itself. It's not actually going to be
the picture that I'm looking at right here. This is it pulled down.
That's it pulled down, correct.
Okay, so it would still be below the TV.
It would still be below the TV.
Okay.
It would just be a little above the pie. So it would be recessed behind the plane of the TV at that point too.
Yeah. I still feel like he should mount it to the TV itself.
Yeah, it's well. I think the problem is when it's in the upright position, it won't fit. If he does that,
right.
That was the issue. So.
Okay. All right. Well, he knows his system better than we do. So let us know how it works out. So a while ago, Patrick wrote to us asking for speakers he could use at his desk at work that would be so directional that only he would be able to hear them. We strongly suggest using headphones instead, but he wanted something wireless, and he wanted to still be able to hear other people when they needed to get his attention. So we suggested open back headphones, but the only pair we could suggest within this price range were both open back and wireless were not Bluetooth, and he wanted Bluetooth.
Yes.
In the end, we were only really able to recommend the wired to open back Sennheiser headphones. So he bought the Sennheiser HD 559s, and he says he's really enjoying them. Best of all, he found the AVRant Clipper Pro. It's a small, affordable, it's about $38, inline Bluetooth aptX adapter. The battery lasts about 6 hours, but you can use it while it's charging. And while its built-in amp isn't super powerful, it's enough to drive the HD 559 so that Patrick can enjoy his music, but not so loud that he can't hear his coworkers when they need his attention. It's been a great solution for him, so he highly recommends giving the AVRant Clipper Pro a try if you need to add a Bluetooth to your standard pair of wireless headphones. I have to see this because I'm not quite understanding what this thing is.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very small little unit. It's a little thing that you could clip to your lapel.
I see
it's just
now,
got a basic little 3.5 millimeter headphone jack and a volume up and down key, and it actually has a little microphone and a call answer button on there too. So if you connect it to your phone, it basically turns any pair of wired headphones into a wireless Bluetooth headset, more or less. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people have reported if you have difficult to drive headphones, it doesn't have the most powerful headphone amp in the world, and you wouldn't expect it for that price and size anyway. But for the purposes he was looking for, which is to not play it too loud in the first place, and the HD 559s are not super difficult to drive, he's like, it's working great. So that's
it looks like on the website too, they have, if you're looking to add Bluetooth to your stereo setup, this is a good way of doing it as well, which is not a bad suggestion, though.
I mean, the price certainly makes it like,
get
it from Amazon and return it if it doesn't work. It's It's not going to cost much to ship. It weighs next to nothing. So
let's get to the questions here. Josh has noticed that a group of people.
The beginning of this already has you just overjoyed.
I'm gonna go to my happy place for a second. If you're on YouTube, you're watching me go to my happy place. That's what it looks like. Okay. Josh has noticed that a group of people on AVS forums seem to prefer highly efficient large speakers such as JTR or Power Sound Audio for a more dynamic movie experience. He currently has 2 SVS PC12 Pluses in optimal positions in his 11 by 12 dedicated theater, and he gets a decent amount of tactile sensation and exceptional chest punch. His mains and center are only SVS Ultra Series bookshelves, though. Only? Okay. And he cares a lot about tactile sensations and really loves bass. Would using higher efficiency, larger speakers increase tactile sensations, or is having optimally placed and adequately powered subwoofers all you need for a dynamic movie? First of all, get off AVS Forum right now. Sir.
Oh, well, not. I go to AVS Forum. There's information there.
Step away. I know, but it's so hard to cycle. First of all,
sift through a lot of stuff.
Sift through a lot. Okay, let me tell you something about people, and I'm sure you realize this, but I'm gonna say it anyways. People love to feel superior to other people. Okay, people love to feel superior to other people. A person who is truly humble is okay with feeling like somebody else knows more than they are. You know who aren't those people? Almost everybody on AVS Forum, okay? Almost everybody on every forum, let's be honest. The whole reason we go to forums are, there's 2 reasons we go. To learn, so that's something we don't know, and then never go back again. Or to flout our knowledge of the topic at hand. And that's what you have run into here. These people have decided that their speakers are the best because of this reason that they came up with. Now, dynamic experiences can happen with any type of speaker. Tactile experiences can happen with subwoofers and speakers that can play down to 20 hertz or, thereabouts. I don't understand how these 2 things are supposed to be connected by you switching out your main speakers. Because that's what it sounds like they're telling you, is that they got a more tactile experience by getting a more dynamic bookshelf speaker. That tactile, that feeling, is not coming from the treble. No. It's not coming from the mid-range. No. It's coming from the bass and the really low bass that you can't even localize. That's where you're getting that really tactile, shake the room sensation. You're not getting it from your bookshelf speakers. Now, it sounds like they may have you confused, or you may be confused, or they may be confused, but these high efficiency speakers, this idea that they're going to be more dynamic, I've never really quite understood that just because that they have high power handling and they can put out a ton of sound doesn't mean that they are doing anything different. They should be playing the same sound at the same volume if you have calibrated your speakers as anything else. So what are they adding to it? Because if they're adding something to it, well, then they're not playing flat. If they're not playing flat, then we should be talking about that and not talking about the fact that they are more dynamic. I mean, what does that even mean? That they can get louder and softer? I mean, if there's background music going through the entire movie, guess what? It never gets that soft, which is what most movies have. So what? I don't know. Don't switch out your speakers for more dynamic speakers because you think you're going to get a more tactile sensation. Right. You want more tactile sensation, get bigger subs. But you have PC 12 pluses in a 11 by 12 foot room. You do not need bigger subs.
Yes, it's the 11 by 12 foot room. There is literally no way you're sitting farther than 12 feet away from your speakers, and that would mean they're
quite impossible.
You're
in one corner and they're in the other corner. Both of them are in the other corner.
Well, that's the only way it could physically work. So no. Now I want to be really clear here. Speakers like what JTR makes, and I'm showing some of their huge Noesis 215s, if you're seeing the images, or what Power Sound Audio makes with their MT. These are like the 210s that I'm showing. These have a place in the market. These
absolutely
can be very much what you might need if your seating distance is far enough away.
30, 40 feet.
Very realistically, these speakers can do some things that a lot of other speakers cannot do.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that means there is absolutely a place for them. And if you have the sort of theater where you're going to actually make use of those capabilities, and you're like, I got JTR and no other speakers would do it for that price, I'm like, yeah. That could absolutely be the case if you have a big enough room.
I got nothing wrong. I got nothing against the speakers. Believe me, that's not where this is coming from.
Not only that, where the high efficiency. So like the JTRs, they'll put out like 98 decibels with 1 watt. The power sound audio ones, they're like 95, 96 decibels with 1 watt. And that can be important if you have an entry-level AV receiver and you're trying to drive all 7 of your speakers with that. And realistically, you know, Gina's measured these over at Audioholics and that. And sometimes, yeah, if you're doing all channels driven at the same time, you're legitimately getting like 17 watts maximum out of all 7 channels simultaneously. Sure. Like that can be the case. And let's say you're sitting 20 feet away. You have an entry-level receiver. You got 17 watts if all 7 speakers are playing at the same time, and you want to hit full reference volume. Well, you can't do that if your speakers put out 83 decibels with 1 watt. It's not going to happen. You need a high-efficiency speaker like this. But when your room is 11 by 12, and I'm assuming you're sitting 10 feet away from your speakers, probably even closer.
Probably closer than that, yeah.
I mean, the Ultra bookshelves are a foot deep themselves, so... yeah, I'm guessing you're definitely no farther away than 10 feet. You just don't need the high efficiency to hit full reference volume. No, I don't know. Maybe you have a desire to damage your hearing and you want to hit 140 decibels or something.
Then you got headphones for that, sir.
Yeah, well, and don't
subject anybody else to it.
You know,
that's for sure.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I don't want to put it in people's minds that there's no place for high efficiency or that there's no place. I mean, like the JTRs are high efficiency and very high power handling, which means that you can put them outdoors. I mean, they have their commercial ones that are meant for like amphitheaters.
Yeah,
that's what they're for. Power sound audios, very high efficiency, but not quite as much power handling, and that brings the price down a little bit. It makes them more reasonable for essentially a large home theater where you're sitting pretty far away, but you're still not going to be putting 800 watts of power into them or something like that. So yeah, there's a place for them, but the tactile part of it that Josh asked about, that's
separate. The part that threw me when I read the question. That's the part that threw me, because you're not going to get any more tactile sensation out of this.
That's from your bass. That's
just from the bass. You know, and I know I'm being slightly belittling to the people online, and they could very well be in situations where they are in, like Rob's talking about, a very big room, and they have.
Well, I mean,
why would you even have a crappy receiver like that? You know, I mean, because first of all, you're never going all channels driven, 7 channels. It never happens. It doesn't exist. Not at reference volume, that's for sure. So. Even with these speakers, even with an entry level receiver, which why on God's green earth would you have a theater that's got a 30-foot?
How many people on this very podcast have we talked to who have 10,000 plus cubic feet?
That's true, but they're usually still not sitting all the way across their house from the speakers.
Sometimes they're saying, I want speakers that I can have in my living room. I'm going to be in my kitchen that's 50 feet away because it's open concept.
True.
And I want to play music for a party, and I want to put it in party mode so all 7 of my speakers are being used, but I don't want to break the bank, and I still want to do all that. It's like, you got to get some really high-efficiency speakers.
It's unusual. I don't think we've ever actually answered that question on this podcast in the 10-plus years we've been doing it.
But it could come up.
It could come up someday. It's almost 11 years, Rob. We're only a couple of months away from 11 years. So the problem here is that's probably not the case. The case is that they have bought some speakers that they like, and they, first of all, want to justify why they bought them in their own minds, why they spent the money, and they want other people to agree with them. And that's what they're doing on the AVS forum, is they're trying to convince other people to buy the same thing they bought. And this is a normal human reaction. You've experienced this, right? You've experienced this where you've bought something that you've loved, you've gotten somebody else to buy it, and they don't love it. And you're like, how can you not love this? It doesn't make any sense to me. This is the best thing I've ever had, or best thing I've ever done, or best thing I've ever owned. You know, and you look for that validation. That's what they're looking for.
The other thing that's pretty common, and we've come across it on this podcast too, is not everybody does fully understand reference volume. Not everybody does fully understand what the trim level calibration is all about in their speakers. A lot of people say, here's where I like to set my volume dial. That's where I've always set it. And when I connected these JTR speakers in place of my whatever I had before, it blew my mind.
Right.
Because they're like 10 decibels louder.
Sure.
That would blow your mind. And they're saying, I didn't touch anything. I left my volume dial where it was, and I connected these new speakers, and it was so much more dynamic. Well, it sounded dynamic because it's 10 decibels louder.
Right.
So,
right.
I mean, and that's really not that uncommon a thing.
I go into people's houses and talk to them about their audio systems. I try not to, but when it comes up, I'm often baffled by the choices that they have made. Like preliminary, hey, this is how you set up speakers. Like one goes on one side, one goes on the other. That's a left, that's a right. You know, I've literally seen like this. It was like a it was a wooden like entertainment unit sort of thing with a TV on top, but the whole thing was like diamonds. You know, like wooden slats and stuff like that with like little shelves, in the diamonds, and there was a speaker on every shelf. I'm like, what are all those speakers doing up there? Like, oh yeah, that's my surround sound system. I'm like, they're all there.
They're all of them.
All of them.
Yeah.
All of them right up there. Like, yeah. Like, okay. Yeah. What are you gonna do? You can't fix that.
Yeah.
So.
No, I mean,
we're gonna go on.
I've met lots of people who like they're uncomfortable turning their volume dial all the way up to 0 or all the way up to 100 if they've left it in the only positive numbers setting. Yeah, like they're just uncomfortable doing it. It feels weird. I'm getting close to the very tip top of how far this volume dial goes. Well, that's actually where it's supposed to be. If everything's
in my home
calibrated
theater,
completely
when I am
differently.
watching a movie and I want to have a movie like experience, I'm usually around -5.
Sure.
That's about where I like it. And
if
there's a bunch of people
and
in here,
swapped out your speakers, it would be different.
Yeah. And without changing the calibration, you're
That's
right.
yeah.
If you had calibrated it correctly, then -5 would be -5 no matter what.
That's right.
Speakers you. All right, let's go on. Vince asks, do front wide speakers need to be angled towards the main listening position? This kind of goes into almost any speaker when we talk about speakers and toe-in. Toe-in is just turning the speaker towards you and how much you turn the speaker towards you, or vice versa, how much you turn the speaker away from you. Some speakers have a terrible off-axis response, which means if they're not pointed right at you, the sound is significantly different and diminished, or not diminished, compromised by not being pointed at you. Very few speakers are that way, but there are some. Most speakers have a reasonable amount of off-axis, 15 up to 30 degrees off-axis. Everything sounds about the same. And there are more than the few speakers that are on the market right now that are only meant to be listened to off-axis, meaning you're never supposed to point them directly at you. And you can, we've talked about this before in the podcast, but it bears repeating. When you're calibrating your front, left, and right speakers, the first thing you want to do is, after you've run your calibration or whatever, and get the distances, levels, and stuff like that, is I point them straight out and listen to them. I point them straight out at myself and listen to them, and then I start adjusting the toe in to see which sounds the best to me when I'm listening to 2-channel music. You would want to do something similar for these speakers. I mean, generally speaking, if you see the diagrams that they put out there, they always have the speakers aimed directly towards you. But then again, they have all the speakers in all the positions aimed directly towards you, and it's almost never the case.
Well, I mean, interestingly, Dolby's own diagram, they're definitely angled to be sort of towards the listening position, but if you actually look at it, they're not aiming right at the primary listening position.
It's kind of like behind you a little bit, right?
Yeah,
behind
a little
the couch.
bit. Yeah. But it's kind of similar to what the front, left, right speakers. They're towed in, but not bang on to be exactly on axis. But that's just an example. I suspect that Vince might have been asking this because maybe he was thinking of in-wall or on-wall mounted speakers.
Right.
Either maybe he has a very wide front wall and he could actually get to the 60-degree mark that way, or on his sidewalls, and maybe he was thinking, I'm going to mount some speakers on my sidewall, so how much do I need to be able to aim them, tow them in at me, because that might be difficult depending on the speaker and its mount, right? And
in walls, I don't know that I would place in walls in a front wide position. I think that that's
No.
not a good option. An on wall would be okay as long as it had some sort of swivel mount.
Swivel mount, yes.
I would assume, let's put it this way, I would the way that they have them pictured is kind of the way I would start with my front wides. Anywhere from pointed directly at like the arms of the couch to maybe a little bit behind it would be about where I would start. And honestly, considering how much information the front wides are actually going to be playing, I probably would never go from there, because why would I? There's
Yeah,
just not
I
a lot.
mean, my method of finding toe in for the front left right speakers, I like to just put on some pink noise, just continuous pink noise through one speaker, get right up close to it so that I'm within a foot of the speaker, and then I move myself left to right, up and down, so that I sort of find the cone where the sound is more or less the same. It's more or less unchanged in tone and timbre, and you'll find that sometimes it changes subtly, sometimes it changes quite abruptly. You'll be in one place and then you move, a couple inches more to the left or more to the right, and the sound changes significantly on some speakers.
Right.
So you can sort of discover this cone of where overall the sound is quite uniform. Within that cone of dispersion, and then I just try to make sure that that cone covers all the seats that I care about, and I would do no differently for my front wides. I would want my seats within the cone.
Whatever that cone is.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, it is about 15 degrees off axis.
Yeah,
It is
15
a
plus
pretty-
or minus.
plus or minus on either
yeah.
side is usually
Yeah,
real safe.
Out to about 30.
Yeah, real safe. Chris from Twitter. Chris asks, his mom noticed the sale prices on TVs at the moment, and she feels as though it might be a good time to purchase. Two models in particular were mentioned: a 58-inch Samsung MU6100 for $600, or a 55-inch Samsung UJ6300 for $500. The slight size difference and the $100 price difference in price are not important. Which one would we recommend? I don't know anything about these TVs. Rob, enlighten us.
So the MU6100 is newer.
Okay.
And so both of these are technically HDR compatible, but the UJ6300 is really just compatible and not capable at all. I mean, it's really a standard dynamic range TV that will happen to accept an HDR signal and not break. But the MU6100, it's by no means bright, but at least it's around 300-400 nits.
Okay.
So it's a visible...
Is it LCD? It's
LCD edge
How
lit.
many? Oh.
So my honest answer here, so first of all, if these really are the only two choices, then it's the MU6100 all the way. Yes, it's $100 more expensive, but it's 3 inches larger, and it's definitely the more capable of the two. So if it's down to those two, no question in my mind, pay the $100
though,
extra.
man.
I know.
Edge-lit.
And $600 can get you a 55-inch Vizio M series right now, because they dropped their price because they weren't happy with TCL undercutting them.
Nice.
So Vizio's M series is the 2017 model. That is now $600 for the 55-inch.
And that's got a bunch of zones of local dimming and all
That's
that
32
stuff, too.
zones of local dimming, but it can get up to over 800 nits. It's got Dolby Vision. It's got Chromecast built in.
Nice.
So overall, and then there is the TCL, the P607 that you can get from Best Buy for $600, 55 inches. That has 72 zones of local dimming. It has Roku built in instead of Chromecast built in. Still has Dolby Vision, so I mean, the Vizio and the TCL, they're both full array local dimming instead of edge lit. They're both Dolby Vision capable, which the Samsungs aren't. They have good streaming services built into them, both of them. So since they're the same price and you were definitely in this 55-inch range, I'm like, I would get a Vizio or a TCL all the way.
I'm gonna say one thing about this, and I agree with Rob 100%. And if it were me, I would probably buy the TCL.
Okay.
I would recommend you go and find a TCL and have your mom operate it, because I found that the operating through the Roku setup,
yeah, because it is all Roku. Yeah.
it's very strange. It's not like normal TVs. It's a little bit different.
Some people really like it though.
Some people do, and some people don't. So I would recommend you have her try one out before you say, this is the one to get, Mom, just to see how she feels about the interface. That's it.
Yep.
Because I think technologically, it's the superior TV right now. But she might be more comfortable with the Vizio because it's a little bit more of a traditional menu that she'll be able to understand.
Yep.
So I don't know how technologically capable your mom is, so that might be something. So Chris asked, did he hear us correctly when we started talking about 7.1.6 Atmos? Are six overhead speakers really a thing now? Yeah.
Thanks to Denon and Marantz' new flagships. Yes.
The flagships. All you guys have is like $4,000, $4,500, and you can have 6 overhead speakers.
You can have it right now. They're shipping right now.
I mean, technically, it's probably cheaper just to buy 2 additional receivers and do that stupid thing, but whatever.
Yeah,
yes.
13 speaker processing is a thing now, thanks to Denon and Marantz. The X8500H from Denon and the AV8805 Pre-Pro from Marantz.
He asks if 7.1.6 and 9.1.4 are doable now. Is it worth pre-wiring for those extra positions? Do we think this will catch on? Will other brands besides Denon and Marantz start offering this too? Will prices come down over time? No. Yes. Those are my answers.
You wouldn't.
Do I think it's pre-wiring? No, I don't. Really? Because I don't. I really don't.
If your walls and ceiling are open and you're running
if they're
wire anyway,
open, that's fine, I suppose. But I don't think that. I mean, I think the chances that this is gonna. Okay, whatever. Do I think it will catch on? I don't think Atmos is caught on. What are you talking about? We're talking about it all the time because everyone asks us about it. Because everybody who listens to this podcast is hardcore into AV. All right, but the reality is, I just stop anybody on the street and ask them what Dolby Atmos is. Anyone. I would be shocked if 1 out of 100 people could tell you that it was something other than I heard that they had it in the theater, I think. Or maybe they talk about it at the beginning of the movie.
Or maybe they bought an LG OLED and they saw Atmos in the settings. If they went into the settings.
If they went into the settings and didn't just leave it on torch mode. Do I think Denon's brands other than Denon and Marantz will start offering? Yes, I do. I think everybody has to. It's always a features race, and everybody adds all the stupid features no matter how stupid they are. I.e. Bluetooth, and for a while you could stream YouTube off of your receiver for a while, I think, if I remember correctly. Will prices come down over time? The answer is yes, they will. They always do. So
yeah. I mean, for me, it's if your walls and ceiling are already open, I'm like, why not run the wires for top middles? Maybe even if you're only going to have 4 overhead speakers, maybe you'll discover you prefer having a combination of front height and top middle versus top front and top rear. So why not run the 6 overhead wires? If you're already
it's not a prohibitive cost, that's for sure. That's
the front wides. That's a little more iffy. You know, I would say only wire them if you're actually like, yeah, I might genuinely use those, because otherwise it's just a waste. It's just another hole to patch in your wall. It's more wire to run. If you're really never going to use it, then don't bother. But if you
front wides, I just don't ever see front wides coming back in a real substantive way. But
especially since the Dolby Surround Up mixer still doesn't use them.
Well, I mean, but there's no reason why the Dolby Surround Up mixer couldn't use any speaker that you put in any position.
It's up to Dolby to
write the code to make that happen. So that
and there's no reason DTS Neural X couldn't use more than 11 speakers.
Or the firmware won't fix that 11 speaker thing. It seems like it should be able to, but who knows? Maybe they will fix it, maybe they won't. The reality is here, though, just think to yourself whether or not that's going to be something.
Yeah.
The rest of the stuff is absolutely true.
Oh, yeah. Now that the chips and the software exist, undoubtedly other brands will start doing it. And I would expect that in a year or two, we'll see whatever replaces the 6400H. It'll probably have 11 amplifiers built in.
But 13 processing.
But 13 processing, so you'll be able to add a 2-channel amp to it to get up to 13. I would expect to see that sort of thing. Because, again, once the chips and the software exist, then why not matriculate that down to other brands and to other models?
I'm still waiting for the movie that makes me a believer of Atmos. You know, I've watched a lot. I've heard some stuff and then said, yep, that's the speaker that's making that noise. And I've never thought that I have yet to be convinced.
Have you watched Dawn of the Planet of the Apes?
I have not.
Except, I don't think they actually put an Atmos soundtrack on the Blu-ray. I think it's only on the Ultra HD, or it might not even be on the Ultra HD Blu-ray. In the theater, that was really impressive in Atmos.
Oh, well, I'll see.
You might have to use an upmixer for it.
That's all right. I got an upmixer. Roy on Facebook. Roy has a universal disc player, but its disc drive just died. He isn't sure what to buy to replace it. The Oppo player seemed like a pretty steep price. But are universal players kind of a dying breed? And what about streaming services? Should you look into getting a separate box like a Roku? Yeah, universal players are definitely a dying breed. That they have been dying for a long. It has become harder. There was a time, like I said, everybody had to have features. There was a time when universal players were the thing. Everybody was selling one. They like Onkyo had one. Denon had the $3,000 one.
Panasonic had one.
Panasonic had one. Of course, Oppo had one of the first ones. That was reasonably affordable. There was the one that just took an Oppo and dropped it in a different box. Yeah, I discovered
which still exists. I mean, the Cambridge Ultra HD Blu-ray player is an Oppo.
Yeah, yeah,
it is.
So, are there other ones out there? I seem to remember Rob mentioning one recently. That was it's an Ultra HD Blu-ray player, and it does all the rest of the stuff too.
That's right. Yeah. So it's Sony's UBP X800. That's their Ultra HD Blu-ray player. Okay. But it plays Super Audio CDs. It plays DVD audio. So it's a universal disc player. And at $200,
that's pretty cheap.
It's not outlandish. It's certainly less expensive than the Oppo. The one feature it lacks is that it doesn't do Dolby Vision. But other than that, it does all the things.
I might have to get that thing.
Yeah,
my wife is going to kill me.
It's, you know, if you were like, I've got some SACDs or I have some DVD audio discs and I'd still like to be able to play them, if $200 is acceptable to you, pretty hard to beat that. I can't think of any alternatives that would better it.
Right. So as far as getting a streaming box, many of these players will have streaming services with them,
which the Sony does, but not all the services.
Right, and this is where we run into a little bit of an issue here, because as a like Roku and I guess the Amazon Fire Stick and the Google Chromecast, Amazon and Google are a little bit of a war. They keep disabling each other's apps and stuff like that.
Yeah, so YouTube doesn't work on Amazon Fire TV devices right now.
Right now, right.
Took that away.
So what I would do is I would get the player.
Yes.
I would see what streaming services it has and what you actually use. And then how it works. Because my parents have got like a Samsung one that I think ended up dying. I don't really remember. But they had like a Blu-ray player and it streamed stuff. And it was so clunky they just hated it. So they used a Chromecast for a while. And they've been using that. Now I think they got a new player. I'm not sure which one it is. But I think they use the so you're going to be able to switch these things up.
Yeah.
It seems to me like Roku is sort of if you're not going to get something bigger, then this is sort of the one that almost everything works with, right? Is there something that
basically every service works with Roku? The only slight drawback to me as a quality snob in both video and audio is that Roku doesn't support Dolby Vision right now. But hey, this Sony player wouldn't either.
Right.
And they can get the Dolby Digital Plus bitstream out, so they usually support Atmos, but some of the apps that can do Atmos on other devices won't do it on the Roku, so that's a software update. And when you're trying to get the very top quality, there's actually no standalone streaming device right now that does Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos. Like, there's not one. Not a
Seems like the NVIDIA
exists.
Shield would be like the first one that would actually be able to do all that stuff.
Yeah, see, I mean, that doesn't do Dolby Vision. It does Atmos, but it doesn't do Dolby Vision. So literally the only way to get both right now is the built-in apps on LG's OLED TVs. That's the only ones that
buy
do
a new TV.
all of it.
Right.
But I would maybe get the Sony. If those apps don't satisfy, then maybe look at getting a streaming player. Or he doesn't have a 4K TV yet. Found that out. So you might end up getting a 4K TV, which will have a bunch of apps built into it.
Built in anyways, yeah.
Yeah, and if you already bought the Sony, maybe that will incentivize you to get.
I do like the Chromecast. I'll be honest with you.
It's nice. Yeah.
I'm a kind of a fan of the Chromecast.
Yeah, I mean, the Chromecast Ultra does do Dolby Vision, but it doesn't do Atmos. So
yeah. All right, whatever.
I just want to say though, if $200 is too much, and all you wanted is like, you know what, it's mostly Blu-rays and CDs. That's really all I mostly care about for my discs. I would still go with a Sony. Because Sony's Blu-ray players, their basic one is the S3700. Their slight step up from that is the S6700. 6700 is quite a bit nicer, and it's just under $100. So that's Blu-ray.
And those are universal
DVDs.
players as well?
No, they're not universal. They don't do Super Audio CD. They don't do DVD audio.
Well, then he doesn't want it. He wants.
Well, that's what I was saying. If 200 is too much and he's willing to sacrifice those
I don't think he is.
No.
Ted, this is going to be long. Ted. The imaging issue at Ted's main seat when using his legacy on-wall speakers continues. If you remember correctly, he has 2 seats. One's against the back wall, and one's a little bit in front of that and lower.
2 rows of seats. Yeah.
2 rows of seats. And the one in the front, he's not getting a really good center image, but the back row right against the wall is getting
and interestingly, even when actually using his physical center speaker, he's finding that in his primary front row, it's for some reason it's a little bit muddy. It's getting a little bit muddied in its sound.
The imaging issue at 10. Okay, wait. On our advice, he put a couple of acoustic panels on the outsides of his front left and right speakers, and then he temporarily hung a duvet in between them to try to get a bit of a baffle wall effect. Seemed to help a little bit, but he's still not as good as simply moving to his back row. He thinks it might be. He thinks maybe it brought the best positioning for the imaging forward by about 6 inches, but he's not entirely sure it didn't just. He didn't just imagine that difference, since there's no way to instantly A/B compare with the duvet and the panels in place and versus not and all that. Anyways, I have an idea here. The other option would be to rotate his entire setup 90 degrees. The room, what? Those are on walls.
Yes, they are big, heavy.
Those are
on
big,
walls
heavy
that
on
require
walls.
substantial mounting hardware.
Oh,
yes.
Rotate his entire setup 90 degrees. The room is 12 by 13 and a half by 9. And right now the TV and speakers are on one of the 13.5-foot walls, so his setup is wider than this long. With putting his TV and speakers on one of the 12-foot walls and making the setup longer than this wide potentially help.
I mean, I can't say no for certain. I also can't say yes for certain, unfortunately. It might help. It's a possibility.
What about the ceiling? Are we getting a ceiling bounce here?
I know, right? It seems so unlikely with those folded ribbon tweeters. It seems so unlikely, but not impossible. Yeah, I know, it's tricky. I mean,
I'm looking at this picture now. I hope you're showing this picture with this kid sitting on the couch,
yeah,
because this is the one I'm kind of looking at right here. I mean, he's got, like, right behind his head on this thing, he's got the couch is back there.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other couch, his head would be like right on. It looks like. I mean, would you think it would be high and it would be above the couch? I wonder, because his daughter looks like.
Yeah, it's not a very tall back on either of these seats. They're futons, basically. Yeah. I know this is a tricky one. This is definitely a tricky one. I mean, the issue is that when he put the panels up front and he threw the duvet in between the front, left, right, so he was only listening to a phantom center at that point, because there's really no way to easily test this with the actual physical center, because other than
but
actually
it looks like
making the baffle.
He put the duvet over the center channel.
Well, yeah, because what are you going to do?
I don't know, but 2 duvets.
But the issue is that he's not entirely sure about the positioning of the very best imaging, but overall he's like, it did sound a bit better, just not all the way better. And the duvet isn't as entirely effective as a true full baffle wall would be.
All right, this is what I want you to do, Ted. I want you to sit on this couch, and I want you to take a panel, and I want you to put it directly behind your head. I want you to put it over your head. Hold it over your head. I want you to switch it around and see if you can adjust the imaging based on just moving that panel around. I know it sounds a little crazy. My idea here is that you're getting a bounce someplace in this room that is making this happen.
I wonder a little bit about toe-in effect as well, which unfortunately, what are you going to do when it's on walls?
Yeah.
Because he did notice some differences when he temporarily took his front, left, rights off the wall and just, kind of like balanced them on chairs so that he could, because initially he was thinking it was the listening angle.
Right.
He was like, when I'm in my back row, effectively they're, narrower. I have a narrower listening angle. When I move forward, effectively, it's a wider angle. So his initial thought was maybe it's the angle, but he tried actually moving them. He also tried moving closer to them, which would mean they're even wider apart. And it turned out that in his primary seat, it didn't really matter how far wide apart he put them. And when he moved closer, things got better too. So it can't.
I wonder if he's getting like a comb filtering thing?
I mean, my thought was that he's getting lobing interference, which is why the baffle wall, just covering the entire front wall in absorption, was my initial thought. But that was the purpose of recommending he, throw the duvet up there, throw the comforter up there, so that, you can do something temporary and easily remove to see if it has any effect. And he's like, it did improve it a little bit, just not.
He's got all those panels. I mean, he could take them all off the wall, and just put them across. You know what I'm saying? I mean, just put them all up front, all around his speakers as best you can.
Yeah,
this is a little bit of a nightmare, to be honest with you. But
this is tough. I mean, what really concerns me most is that he said his actual center speaker exhibits a similar problem. Because if it was only his phantom center, I'm like, well, that's why you've got a physical center.
Right.
But the problem is that this is happening to his center as well, which means it has to be some kind of sound wave interaction creating this. It has to be. Because when he moves, the sound changes and the speakers sound better.
I wish I could hear this, to be honest with you, because it's...
I know, right?
Yeah, I don't want to say it's all in your head, dude, but I kind of want to say it's all in your head, dude, because it sounds so implausible. But I trust Ted. I do. I mean, he's a sound guy. I mean, he made the music for the end of this podcast. Yeah. So I trust his ears. I trust that he is hearing something, and it really is going on.
It wouldn't shock me if, and Ted would admit this. I will bet it is actually a fairly subtle thing.
Oh, I'm sure it's subtle.
But
that's okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm not saying that, but I'm just I would doubt that this is truly literally anyone off the street would walk in and go, something's really wrong in this primary seat. I'm thinking this is a degrees, not a on-off.
The other thing I want him to do is I want him to stay on that couch, but I want him to kneel on it so that he's higher.
Yeah.
And maybe the height is what's making the back row a little bit better.
I know, yeah, because I mean that's sort of the last variable that we haven't fully addressed is ceiling bounce, height differential. That's sort of the last variable that you can test in any sort of not entirely impossible way.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, we'll try all that and then get back to us.
Okay.
All right.
We'll get there one way or another.
We'll get there, dude. We will help you. We've had what's his name? The guy with the weird problem that took us a while to figure out.
Oh, the Netflix problem. Yeah. Oh, the other thing I did want to say to Ted is he's mentioned that on a couple of his trials, because this is a tedious process, and I completely understand that. But on a couple of trials, he did not rerun Odyssey.
Yeah.
Which,
I don't blame him
again, and again, when it's just your imaging, however, I would either opt to always just have Odyssey off, or you have to run it every time. Because if it has attempted to compensate for some new positioning or new acoustic panels or whatever, and then you move something but you leave that compensation in place, how are you really going to judge? Unfortunately, I mean, I know it's a huge hassle, but
I would actually just turn it. I mean, if you haven't already tried this with Odyssey, with Odyssey off, you need to try it with Odyssey off, because Odyssey could be causing the problem in the first place. It's not beyond the realm of possibility.
He's got these two enormous power sound audio subs both up front. I'm like, those could be creating wave interference.
Turn off your subs too. I mean, at this point we're going to be we're going to be throwing the kitchen sink at Ted.
Little bit of grasping at straws, but still some things to try.
Yeah. So the things I said, plus turn your subs off, try it. Make sure you turn Odyssey off, try it. Get higher, get lower.
Yeah.
Try to see if there's a wave interference coming at you from some angle.
Yeah. Panel above your head to try and get rid of the ceiling bounce if that's what it is.
Yeah. Infinite Gary. Gary's car is old enough that his audio system is only an AM/FM radio and a cassette player. When he wants to play CDs, he's just been using a portable CD player and then plugging its line output into one of those cassette adapters with the wire that sticks out of the cassette slot. It functioned, but it doesn't sound all that great. I had a friend of mine that used to do that, and he said that when you first got those things, they sounded great, but they quickly degraded over time.
Yes, they do.
So, yeah, he has other disc players, but they're home units, not portable players. Still, if he could rig them up to draw power from the 12-volt cigarette lighter, would they provide better sound quality than the portable CD player? Maybe even try an Oppo this way. Boy, that is way overkill. No, that's not going to work. The problem is the little cassette thingy. That's
Yeah.
what degrades over time.
Yeah.
It's not that your portable CD player sucks. It's that cassette thing is a terrible workaround. Now, I don't know your head unit that's in your car. The simple solution to this is swap out the head unit. It's a lot cheaper than putting an Oppo in your car and then trying to rig it up to go off a 12-volt
even if
battery.
the only thing you get is
12 volt,
Bluetooth,
yeah.
that would still be an improvement over the cassette deck.
Right, and that's the easiest solution.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's actually the one you should go for. Okay, but if you opt not to do that, like in my car, it's a 2003 Honda Pilot. It's got 253,000 miles on it. I'm going to drive that thing into the ground. But when I first got it, it didn't have any way. It had a CD player. It had a DVD player for the TV thingy in the back for the kids. But it didn't have anything else. It didn't have any way of playing iPod because when this thing was made, there were no iPods. So I looked up online and found that there was, in fact, a way of adding an iPod to it by this adapter majigger thingy that was meant for a CD player.
Right, it's
like
a similar
changer.
thing. It's got the little wire off of the thing that goes in the CD slot, right?
No.
Oh, no?
No. This, I had to take the head unit out, and then where you would plug in the wire for your CD changer, I plugged in this thing. So I switch it to CD changer, and it works. Now, you may have an option of that. In my wife's car, which was a Hyundai, it's no longer a Hyundai, she got a new car, but they had Cirrus or XM or one of those. And what people were doing were taking the wires from those, splicing them out with something that you could connect a 3.5 millimeter jack to.
Another source input, basically.
Exactly. So if you have an additional source input on your head unit, chances are there is going to be a way to get back there and add an iPod or a phone jack.
Or even just a car CD player.
Or a car CD player is true as well. But it doesn't sound like that's really what he wants. So the real solution is to switch out your head unit. Secondarily, if you want to keep your head unit and there is an additional input back there somewhere for something, you got the chance of kind of grafting one on there.
Yeah, but yeah, he was thinking like maybe higher quality DACs in the the home CD player or the home disc player versus the portable disc player. It's like that's not the thing that's going to change the sound. What's holding you back is that cassette adapter. That's the thing holding you back. In fact, getting a new one might sound better.
Yeah, but you just have to get a new one like once a month. You know what I mean? You're going to be going through these things pretty quickly, depending on how much you use your car. So now that Rob has an OLED TV, what setting does Rob find appropriate for the OLED light, which is similar to the backlight setting in an LCD, for darkroom viewing of standard dynamic range content? Gary settled on 20, but that was for a 2014 model, so...
I've settled on 30. For dark room, I've settled on 30 for my OLED light setting. Now, that is not 100% correct. That is brighter than a 100 nit peak. It gets you a little over 150 nits with the 30 setting. So I've made it a little better, but I have bias lighting in my setup, so I'm not in a completely dark room. And and I like a little bit brighter.
One of these days I'm going to get up to Canada to see your room. I don't know where we're both going to sit. I imagine it only has one like little wooden chair.
I've got a sofa. I got a 3-seat sofa.
All right.
That's right.
Since the newer OLED TVs are brighter overall and capable of much higher peak brightness for HDR, what would that affect the OLED light setting if Gary were to buy a newer OLED? Let's be honest, Gary. No matter what you bought, you're gonna fiddle with it. So you're never gonna just go, oh yeah, I'm gonna set it to 20 because I always set it to 20. You're gonna fiddle with it, and that's why we love you, man.
Yeah, not terribly likely because it's pretty much so. Before we had gamma for standard dynamic range, and normally they would recommend a gamma of 2.4 for a completely dark room. Which meant that everything stayed darker a little bit longer, and they would recommend a gamma of 2.2 for a not bright but a somewhat lit room, which means that things got brighter a little bit more quickly. Well, they actually did define a very strict electro-optical transfer function for standard dynamic range now that's BT 1886. So that is now a very strict, exactly like the PQ curve for HDR.
Right.
This is now a very strict, this signal level means exactly this many nits type of description for standard dynamic range.
So 20 would be 20 on all these TVs.
So yeah, the setting of 20 would get you into whatever part of that curve, the same on all these TVs.
That you felt was right for your room.
That's right. Yeah, so it shouldn't actually be different there. What would be different, of course, is his was old enough. I don't think it did support HDR, and of course the new ones do. But when you do that, you basically want to leave all the contrast, brightness, and OLED light settings at default, because those are where they ought to be. As long as you go into the correct mode, which in the LG OLEDs is the cinema mode. If you go into the cinema mode for HDR or Dolby Vision, all those settings are actually correct. If what you want is correct to the PQ curve, then it's done.
We're talking about Gary. He's never going to leave it. He's never going to leave
and
it.
when I have lights on in my room, I have chosen to not adhere strictly to the PQ curve. I switch over to the cinema home picture mode.
Look at you. You're
it
maniac.
brightens everything up just a little bit. Brightens it all up just a little bit.
And that's okay.
It looks better when I have some lights on.
Mike has a Samsung KS8000 4K HDR TV. His receiver is a Yamaha RX A760. And his sources are a cable box, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and NVIDIA Shield TV. Everything is working fine except for the NVIDIA Shield. If he plugs the Shield directly into Samsung TV inputs, it works fine. But if he plugs the Shield into his Yamaha receiver, his Samsung TV reports that he's receiving no signal. All of his other sources work fine being plugged into the Yamaha. Can it pass HDCP 2.2?
It sure can. Yep. That's one of the advantages. It can pass Dolby Vision, in fact, even though the Shield doesn't do that.
He tried plugging the Shield into the same HDMI port that he uses for his cable box. His cable box was, for sure, working just fine. No dice. So he tried temporarily plugging the Yamaha's HDMI output to a small 720 TV rather than a Samsung, and everything worked. NVIDIA Shield was plugged into the Yamaha, and the Yamaha was plugged into the 720 TV, and it functioned just fine. So on Rob's advice, he went back to his Samsung TV and tried hot plugging his Shield into the Yamaha. In other words, the Samsung TV was powered on and set to its HDMI number 4 input. The Yamaha receiver was powered on. Its HDMI output was feeding Samsung's HDMI number 4 input. And the Yamaha was set to HDMI 1, which he for sure knows works because that's the HDMI input he normally uses for his cable box, which works fine. And then the Shield was powered on and everything powered on, and he plugged the Shield's HDMI cable into the Yamaha. The picture of the NVIDIA logo appeared on the Samsung TV, but it only lasted a few seconds, and then the no signal message came back on the Samsung TV. So what's going on here? Any chance it's just the HDMI cable going from his Yamaha to a Samsung TV? It is fairly long. It seems strange that all his other sources would work fine, though, in the ideas.
It could be that cable.
That's.
It could
I mean,
be.
if he, well, I mean, can we adjust the output of the NVIDIA Shield so it's not putting out full HDR with 10-bit color and all that nonsense?
The problem is, how do you do that when you can't see its interface on the TV?
Well, I mean, you put it directly into the TV and then make the adjustment, and then
Right.
you plug it into the Yamaha. I mean, he says you can see it from time. He saw it on the other TV.
Yeah.
So, yeah, to me, that's what it seems like to me is that we're getting a signal loss because of either the HDCP isn't functioning right, which it should be, or more likely, you're getting a signal loss because you're passing too much data down that HDMI cable that is either too long or not rated for the amount of data that's going through it. So,
because the Shield, much like the first Ultra HD Blu-ray players that came out, this was a thing that happened to a lot of people when they got their first Ultra HD Blu-ray players, that first Samsung, the very first Panasonic. They would, if they detected a television that was capable of accepting 12-bit,
right,
4K at 60 hertz,
yeah,
full 444 chroma. Well, you can't even call it subsampling because at that point
It's
there is
not
no subsampling, just 444 chroma. If the TV's EDID, it's extended display information, said that it was capable of accepting all that, then that's what it sent. Even for its basic menus, it would send 4K, 60 hertz, 12-bit 444, which gets you to the full 18 gigabits that HDMI 2.0 can support. And the NVIDIA Shield does the same thing.
I think that if you can go into the settings of the NVIDIA Shield just by plugging directly into your TV so that you can see it for the brief period of time, then lowering the output or minimizing it so that you're only saying 10-bit or,
10-bit 422.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know I was trying to read up. So first of all, some of that troubleshooting, I had a pretty long back and forth on Twitter, and we were going through this last.
The 140 characters.
Well, no, we were direct messaging, so it wasn't quite that. But I wanted to make sure that one, he just didn't have a bum NVIDIA Shield unit, because that's not impossible. But he was like, well, plugged it directly into my Samsung, it works. But I'm like, well, okay, well, let's see if we can just get it to work through the Yamaha in any way, shape, or form. So that's where the whole connecting it to this spare 720p TV that he had, and that did work. So I'm like, okay, so there's not just some inexorable problem between the Shield and the Yamaha receiver. It can go through the Yamaha into a TV, but of course with the 720p TV, it's not trying to send 18 gigabits. It's trying to send something much, much lower. All of his other sources, so let's see, the cable box isn't going to be sending that full fat source.
1080i maybe.
The Switch certainly isn't.
Does it even do? It does 1080p though. The Switch
1080p, yeah, but it's not 4K and not 12-bit or anything. So the Xbox One, I don't know if he has an Xbox One S or X or if it's an original Xbox One. But even if it is the Xbox One X, which of course is the most advanced, it defaults to sending 10-bit and YCC 422, so it's sending less than 10 gigabits per second by default. So all of your other sources are not defaulting to sending 18 gigabits, which is why it could be the cable is not actually handling 18 gigabits, which is certainly possible.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like. All right. Nevada dealers on Twitter, which is, I hope he's dealing the state or TVs or something. I don't know. That's okay.
Well, it's Nevada.
Whatever.
Maybe he works in a casino. He could be a dealer.
He could be a dealer. That's true. It was. Could we recommend some home theater seat companies? There are a lot of them out there, and I think many, if not all of them, are extremely overpriced. I would be dead honest with you. Couches are overpriced anyways, as far as I'm concerned. They are ridiculous. If you're looking for like true home theater seating, there's tons of them. Rob's going to send you to a couple of them. I just bought new seating for my home theater. I did not go with home theater seating because we specifically wanted a very specific thing. We did not want, an arm rest between all of them. We didn't want coast, drink holders or whatever, even though I really liked one, but we don't have that. We wanted one big couch where the whole thing reclined and all five of us, my family, I have a family of five, could sit together at the same time. So it's actually 3 seats, but the 2 seats on the ends are like a seat and a half, and the seat in the middle is like a seat and a quarter. So between that, it is a over 10-foot long couch with only 3 seats. They have 2 power reclines on the 2 ends, and the one in the middle does not power recline. You have to pull a lever, but
it does recline.
It does recline. So it has been. So for me, that's what I did. I just went to my local dealer and said it was on Black Friday, got a little bit of a discount, and Bob's your uncle. That's what I did.
All right.
But there are tons of them out there. The Omni seating, I think, is what I went through with my last seat, my last home theater couch. It was true home theater seating. It was very nice. It was fine. I got no problems with it. I just didn't want to have to go through all that again. And this ended up being quite a bit cheaper.
Well, I'll go through my favorites from least to most expensive.
Okay.
So HT Market stands for Home Theater Market, but they go by HT Market. They actually have their own sort of branded seating that they sell. They call it HT Design. That's the series of seating.
Right.
And those are some of the least expensive, and they have really nice feature sets. So it's the full power recline. You can have the LED lighting. It's got the cup holders. You can get ones where the headrest is either manually movable or motorized movable.
Yeah, I've seen those too. Yeah.
So, all the various bells and whistles that you might want for about the lowest prices you're probably going to find with all those features available and full leather and all of that. So around $700 a seat. They got some that are a little bit less expensive, some that are a little bit more, but that right in that sort of ballpark, around $700 a seat.
I think we paid less than half that for our couch. It's not leather though.
Yeah.
But I didn't want leather. So that's part of it.
So, but yeah, that's one I like to recommend that for if you want lower price or you want a whole bunch of seats. It could be one way to get that. And they have nice different sizes too. Then another one, a step up from that in price, would be the Fusion Collection seating. So it's fusioncollectionseating.com. Now they're in the about $850 per seat and up. So a little bit more expensive, but not crazy more. And again, really nice feature sets, full leather, power recline, motorized headrests if you want them, all the stuff. Then you jump pretty big. You jump up to about $1,500 a seat for my next one, which is Continental seating.
I've sat on Continental seating. They have like the theme stuff too.
Yeah.
Where so you could like, if you want something that looks like a specific thing, old timey seats and that sort of thing, but still has all the features, Continental seating. It's very nice stuff. It's very nice.
The other thing about Continental seating is if you want a full D-box set up at home, they're one of the few companies that actually has full D-box seats. Fusion seating has the plates already built in if you want to put a mini butt kicker in there optionally. So these are some nice little features that may or may not be appealing to you. And then at the very tippy top, full custom, $2,000 per seat is their minimum. There's nothing cheaper than $2,000 per seat from Elite Home Theater Seating, which is actually a company that's local to where I live. So they don't make anything that isn't fully custom. They don't make anything that is less than $2,000 a seat. But it is very, very nice. And it better be. It bloody well better be.
It better conform to my butt when I sit down. I mean, it better have I better have a indentation of me.
Yep.
I should feel like I'm floating on air on $2,000.
Yeah, I mean, people will be saying, well, why isn't there anything between the $850 to the $1,500 per seat ones? And of course there are. It's just to me, I don't know what you're getting for paying more than what the Fusion Collection seating offers you. I don't know what you're getting beyond what they already offer at this sort of $850, $900 per seat price. Whereas at least once you get to Continental, they're offering some more designs and features in the D-Box stuff that others aren't at a lower price. So that's why I ended up with that jump in my personal recommendation list.
Earl wants to connect both his Parasound JC3 Plus phono preamp and his Oppo UDP205 Ultra HD Blu-ray player for CDs. It's an Ultra HD Blu-ray player for CDs. He's just playing CDs through this thing.
He's just playing music discs, yeah.
To his Macintosh MX122 processor, which has balanced XLR inputs. Unfortunately, the Macintosh only has a single pair of XLR inputs, so he can't plug both XLR sources in at the same time. Could he use XLR Y splitters? He doesn't want to degrade the sound or blow anything up. He'd never be listening to vinyl and CD at the same time, so there shouldn't be any risk of doing this as long as he uses a good quality Y splitters, right? Or is there a better solution to his problem? Do they not have regular inputs?
RCA inputs, sure. You could feed one of them could be fed by RCA instead of XLR, and that would be the solution to that.
I mean, because it's the same signal. I mean,
he's got balanced outputs though, and he wants to use them. Dagnabbit.
Okay, now the honest answer is the sonic differences between RCA and XLR at the length of cable that you're using, unless you so happen to have 500 feet of XLR cable between your CD player and your preamp, is negligible. It is indistinguishable. And I challenge you to try plugging one of them in via RCA. I would say the Ultra HD Blu-ray player.
Yeah, because I will say for the Parasound Phono preamp, by using the XLR connection, you're getting like free gain from that.
Yeah,
kind of,
yeah.
Because it's sending out the signal and an inverted version, and then when one of them is inverted on the other end to cancel out any of the noise that might have been picked up in the 6 feet of cable at the most. But you get a little bit of free gain, which could be kind of useful for a phono source. So I would continue to have your phono plugged in via XLR, and I would switch over to the dedicated 2-channel RCA connection from the Oppo 205 because it has that.
Yeah, which is a absolutely pristine connection anyhow. And if you want to A-B it, I mean, just A-B it. You should be able to, I mean, you could, can't you do that on that one? Can't you plug in the RCAs and the XLRs and then switch between the two?
Well, I'm sure you could just on his Macintosh, you could just switch
That's
sources.
what I'm saying. Just switching the sources. You could just do that. Go back and forth. Now, you'll have to make sure there isn't a volume gain.
You'll have to level
based
match.
on that.
Yeah, volume.
You'll have to level match those two things. But other than that, I challenge you to find a difference sonically in sound. But if you believe that you have found one,
right,
and I'm not going to argue with you if you have, it seems like, I can't tell you why, but it seems to me it would be a bad idea to use a Y splitter to have this thing go in here.
Well, yeah, because then you just turned the output into an input.
Right.
I'm talking of, like, let's say what's
phono
playing right now is your Ultra HD Blu-ray player. Its XLR output is now feeding both your Macintosh processor and your Parasound phono preamp. It's like it's an input to that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like a good idea. I would use a switch.
Yeah, there's got to be an XLR switch out there.
Yeah,
I mean, how can there not be? Yeah.
Yeah, so you said you don't want any chance of degrading anything, so I'm going to go passive XLR switch. All right? There's no power connected to this thing. It's just a piece of metal inside moving from one side to the other when you choose input A.
I got to see this
input
thing.
B.
I see the link here. Let me click on this thing.
Yeah. So it's by a company called Sescom. It looks metal, but it's actually plastic, which is why it's $46. Now, it's only a single XLR connection. In other words, it's a single output in your case, switching between two inputs. So you would need two of them for stereo at $46 a pop.
You're $100 into this thing.
So it's $100. You need two of these, but I would use a switch. The reason I did that is there are, of course, stereo XLR switches, but they're all $180 and up because apparently not that many people are passively switching between XLR things, seemingly. But yeah, that one, two of those would do the trick. One for left channel, one for right channel.
Yep.
I wouldn't use a Y cable.
AV source too. Yeah, I don't want to use a Y cable either.
No.
But RCA is really the answer.
Yeah, RCA from U205.
Carl has been happy using his Denon flagship receiver over the years. He's currently using their AVR X7200WA, so he's very interested in the new X8500H. But they've already talked about adding HDMI 2.1 via hardware upgrade, so Carl would rather wait until that upgrade is all settled and he can buy the A8500HA or whatever it ends up being called with a 2.1 already on board. When do we expect that to happen? At close to the end of 2018, or will the wait be longer?
Not earlier than the end of 2018. I'll say that.
Yeah.
I would guess spring of 2019. That would be my personal guess of when it'll happen, because there's not going to be anything else using HDMI 2.1 before then.
Yeah.
We're going to see the first actual HDMI 2.1 products that you can buy probably at CES 2019.
That's my
January.
guess. That's my guess, is that in 2019, right before CES, they'll let you know that the upgrades are coming.
Yeah.
And then at 2019, they'll be showing them off, and then people start putting in their orders or whatever, and then you get in line.
So my guess would be about a year from now.
Yeah, I get behind that. I would say a year from now. When you'll be able to buy them in the store, it's going to be a couple months after that. I think. We'll see.
Well, spring 2019 then.
I think spring 2019, summer, that area is when we're going to be looking at that. Would it be possible for us to go over the settings recommendations again for his signal chain? He has a JVC X7500 projector connected to his Denon X7200WA, and his source is the Oppo UDP203 Ultra HD Blu-ray player. And he wants the best settings for when he's watching 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray discs. This is this JVC projector thing where you have to go in and manually change it, right?
Is this the one? Yeah,
so
and that's the really important thing to know with the X750 and that whole generation. There was the X950 and the X550 as well, is that if you are watching HDR, you have to manually select the HDR picture mode. It will not automatically detect the HDR signal and switch itself into HDR mode. You have to manually put it in HDR picture mode. So that's just an important thing to know. And all the 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray discs so far have HDR10. So if you're playing a 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray, put it into HDR picture mode. That's step number one. Step number two, on their website, and we'll have a link for this. I already sent it to him via email, but we'll have a link for it on our website, avrant.com, in the show notes. JVC themselves put out a set of instructions for these are the settings you should use when you're in HDR picture mode. And there are additional settings for when it is in Rec 2020 color mode, which will be the case for all Ultra HD Blu-rays. So it tells you the settings. Here's the settings you use on your JVC for HDR and Rec 2020. So that's pretty much taken care of on his display. For your Denon, you just want to set it to bypass.
Sure.
You don't want it doing anything to the video. Doesn't need to. Nothing you want it to do. So you just want it to bypass all of its video settings. So that leaves the Oppo, which you can just leave everything on auto. It'll function. But when you do, when you put the JVC into HDR picture mode, it is capable of accepting the full 18 gigabits per second signal. So if the Oppo is set to auto, it's going to try to send 4K at 60 hertz, 12-bit color, YCC 444. That's what it's going to try to send, which will work, but there's the possibility that your HDMI cable, because I imagine it's a long one if it's going to a projector, that might be something, and it's also really not necessary to send all of that. So you do have the option. What I would probably recommend you do in the case of the Oppo is you go into its video settings, its video setup, and there's one for color space is one of the options, and I would set that to YCC 422.
Sure. That's
really what it ought to be. That's on the disc itself is 420. It's best if your source device ups that to 422, and then your display will change that into RGB for actual display.
And it's all that is the way it's derived color.
It is.
You don't need to send, the absolute value of yellow, the absolute value of red, the absolute value of whatever it is, green or whatever it is, right? You don't have to send that. You can send full value of one and half values of the other two.
That's right.
And then you can use mathematics to derive what they actually are. And I've just kicked my camera. I've seen the whole mathematical proof of why this is. But the reality is don't be worried that you're going to lose some color by doing this.
No.
You will not. You will lose absolutely nothing. It's just a way of data compressing it losslessly.
Saving some bandwidth.
That's all you're doing. It's a lossless data compression so that you're saving some bandwidth so you don't have to worry about your cable.
Yeah, and right below the color space setting in the video setup is the color depth setting, and I would set that to 10-bit because that's what's on the discs. It's on the discs is 10-bit, so leave it at 10-bit instead of having the Oppo send out 12-bit for essentially no reason. So if you do those two things, it'll lower your bandwidth a little bit, and that's about it. Now, the very last one is under the video setup, there are the HDR settings. And you do have the option of, I would either leave it at auto, which means it'll send out HDR10, and you will have to manually put your JVC into HDR mode, and then it will go into HDR10 mode, and it will all function. But you do have the option of, in the Oppo, using their strip metadata feature. And when you do that, what's essentially being set is just the PQ curve, just the PQ information, the perceptual quantizer. So that's just the raw, this signal means this many nits thing with no metadata attached to it any longer, which means it's all up to your JVC to just go, well, this signal could potentially be anywhere between 0 and 10,000 nits, but you're going to set your peak brightness based on your screen size and your ambient light level and whether you have your lamp on high or low, and you're going to set all of that until standard dynamic range looks correct. And then whatever additional headroom of light output you have above that, that's what you got. And that's as much as it's going to try to show. Because if you try to use the HDR10 setting, very often scenes end up looking too dim on a projector. Because it attempts to say, it says, okay, in this scene, the peak brightness is 200 nits, so I can do that all pretty reasonably. But in this next scene, the peak brightness is 4,000 nits. And in order to squeeze that all in, I have to dim everything to do that. Whereas if you just get rid of that metadata to begin with, It's just like, well, here's standard dynamic range. I can show you that properly, and everything above that, I'll do what I can.
Right.
So some people prefer that just so that stuff doesn't end up looking too dim. There's no right or wrong. Give it a try. It's personal preference.
So any new thoughts on projectors getting Dolby Vision or HDR10? If theater
10
projectors...
plus.
10 plus, I'm sorry. If theater projectors in the Dolby cinemas can use Dolby Vision, why can't home projectors? Wouldn't having Dolby Vision make projectors look better and more competitive with flat panels when it comes to showing HDR? Well, the whole problem with this is that there's no way of the projector knowing, without measuring, how much light is actually coming off the screen.
Yeah.
It knows how much light it's giving off.
Yes.
But it has no idea what screen you have or how far away it is from it and everything else.
How large it is.
There's just...
How much ambient light, the gain of your screen.
So you can do this within a flat panel because they know absolutely how much light they're giving off. It doesn't make any difference, the room and everything else.
And they know the size of the image because it's a fixed flat panel, yeah.
So what do we think about Dolby Vision and HDR10 Plus coming to I don't think it's going to happen. I think the only way you're going to see this happen, I mean, I would love to see it happen. I think the only way you're going to see this happen is in like a more professional setting. And the reason why you can do this at cinemas is because you can calibrate it. It's going to stay the same.
Yeah, they know what the screen size is. They know the gain of the screen. They know the ambient light levels. Yeah,
they know all that.
All the variables are there for them.
The only way I can see this happening in the home as of right now, without having some sort of ultra projector that has like a light meter on the front of it that does some sort of test tone calibration thingy, which I'm not saying that's not possible, and it certainly is. I see this more as if I were an installer, I would be very interested in figuring out how I could make this happen with a projector so that I could offer this as because this would actually sell. This would be a reason to go back to installers, and because right now installers, they'll like calibrate your projector. They're like, well, I just kind of turned it on and set it to cinema. It looks pretty good. We don't even need them anymore for that sort of stuff. We need them for other things, but we don't need them for that. This would be a reason to need calibrators again.
Yeah, there's that. I'm going to be completely honest with you. LG's answer at CES, because people asked them, they're like, "Are you going to support HDR10 Plus?" Yeah. And outside of the fact that they and Samsung are bitter rivals and never want to do anything that the other one is doing, their answer of the reason they're not planning to support HDR10 Plus right now is because HDR10 Plus, some people were wondering, how did Amazon manage to take all of their existing HDR10 titles and in one day release all of them in HDR10 Plus format? How did they do that? Did they go back and regrade everything? No. HDR10 Plus can be done via algorithm.
Sure.
So it can just essentially be done automatically. And LG was saying, well, we already have the thing that they call active HDR, which is that when it gets an HDR10 signal, the static metadata version, it basically, instead of just using that static metadata and going, okay, here's the peak brightness, here's the average brightness, and here's the minimum brightness, and we're going to set that once and leave it alone, they actually analyze the signal on a scene-by-scene basis and dynamically adjust. Now, that wasn't defined by a company like Dolby. It's not even defined as some sort of standard under SMPTE or ITU or anything, but they're like, we can basically fake dynamic metadata already from regular HDR10 or even HDR in the PQ format with no metadata attached to it at all. So if HDR10 Plus is going to be driven by an algorithm, they're already doing it. It's a different version. It's a non-standardized version. It doesn't have a ITU number associated with it, but they're already basically doing the same thing. That, to me, might be the better solution for projectors.
Yeah.
Because it's actually the same thing I was just talking about with the strip metadata feature.
Yeah.
What you can do is say, okay, let's forget about metadata so that from scene to scene, you're not seeing this change in average brightness. So that shadows are always the same level rather than pumping up and down depending on the peak brightness from scene to scene or frame to frame. So rather than trying to do dynamic metadata with a projector, why don't we just say, here's the PQ curve. It goes from 0 to 10,000. for the range that's on a flat panel would be 0 to 100, your standard dynamic range, that should actually be from 0 to 15 foot lamberts, or approximately 0 to 50 nits on a projector. That would be the standard. And why don't we just set that, and then whatever light output is available above that, we'll do our best. And they could even dynamically adjust, just like LG is doing with their active HDR. They could do the same thing. They could analyze the incoming HDR signal and modulate how much of that additional light beyond 50 nits is available to try and retain as much detail on a scene-by-scene basis. But it would be unique not only to that projector, but to your setup, because you've calibrated for SDR, and then it is going to calculate what to do for everything above SDR. I actually think that's a better solution than Dolby Vision for projectors. For projectors,
right. I think my comment stands, though, that if Dolby Vision could certify people, or Dolby could certify people to install Dolby Vision projectors in theaters, that would be a selling point. People would pay for it, and I think it may not be any better than what you're describing. But at the same time, that never really stopped anybody from buying stuff.
No, I agree. Yeah, you're right about that.
So I just don't see a way for HDR10 Plus or Dolby Vision to come to projectors without that intermediate step of calibration.
Yeah, because you've got to enter those variables somehow. The screen size, the screen gain, the distance, the ambient lighting level, all that.
So what do we think the chances are that his current JVC projector could be his last projector? Well, if you get hit by a meteor tomorrow... I mean, that'd be your last one then. In this installation, he needs a screen that can roll down, since he has a door he occasionally needs to access from his front wall. Ideally, he'd like his screen size to be 150 to 160 inches, but he's stuck with 125 inches because he always has a nice Stuart screen. Plus, going much larger would mean the dimmer image from his projector. Clearly, it is possible to buy a larger roll-down projector screen plus a brighter projector, but that would be quite a lot of money. He's envisioning how awesome it would be to have 150 rollable OLED. You think that's not going to be a lot of money? But is that even a pipe dream? It is if you don't want to buy a screen and a projector. He's used projectors for 30 years. They're wonderful, but it's always meant a box hanging down from his ceiling, long cables running through his attic, and having to black out his room and sit in the dark. Should he hold out hope that his current setup will get him will last him long enough to get to the rolling 150-inch OLED of his dreams in a few years? Or should you plan on a potential screen and projector upgrade before that will be a reality? Dude, I don't see a 150-inch rollable OLED ever.
Yeah, maybe ever. 150-inch.
150.
Well, I shouldn't say ever, but
I would be very surprised if we saw that ever. But if we did see it, it would not be next year.
Oh, it's not going to be in a few years, no.
Or the year after that, or the year after that, or maybe 10 years. 10?
I mean, eventually maybe? I could see the science fiction. It's essentially your wallpaper. You can just put displays like anywhere you've got a wall or a window, that could be a display.
I see that before I see OLED TVs. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah.
How about
that
size?
Instead of a screen that rolls down, you just have a big picture window, and that becomes a screen, right? Like, I could see that one day being what
I see virtual reality being a thing that we all sit there with goggles on our heads before I see a 150-inch rollable
150-inch rollable OLED. I mean, so Samsung has their micro LED. That's 146 inches. That's very close. That's not a roll down. That's a tile display, so it doesn't help you with your door. No. But right now it's $2 million. You can't buy it, and they said probably about 9 years with Samsung's guess before that's actually a product people might buy for their homes. At which point it's still going to be probably over $1 million. No,
yeah, but by then $1 million will be like $55 Canadian.
If you're thinking that you'd like a bigger screen and a brighter image, I would count on getting a new projection screen and a new projector. I would count on that. I don't see the 150-inch flat panel-ish type thing.
No, I don't either. So he uses an Apple TV 4K. He's noted that it still does not have the ability to simply pass along the audio bit stream from the source. So he has selected best audio available in the settings. When he does so, the front panel of his Denon sometimes shows multi-channel as a listening mode on his front panel. Is that bad? Is there a better setting he could be using? Multi-channel means that it's being decoded at the source.
Yes.
And you're getting PCM into your receiver, which is perfectly fine. There is nothing wrong with that. There is no Dolby decoder inside something that is better than a Dolby decoder inside the other something, because they're all the same Dolby decoder. All they're doing is taking the ones and zeros from Dolby and turning it into an analog signal.
Yeah,
that's all they're doing.
That multi-channel in on the front of your Denon is actually what's going to happen when your Apple TV 4K is getting a Dolby Digital Plus audio bit stream from, say, Netflix. And that is how the Apple TV 4K right now handles Dolby Digital Plus. It decodes it itself. So it doesn't send Dolby Digital Plus bit streams. It doesn't have the ability to send a Dolby Digital Plus bit stream to your Denon. But it is compatible with Dolby Digital Plus. So when it gets a Dolby Digital Plus stream from one of its sources, it decodes it itself. And it sends it out as 7.1 PCM to your Denon.
That's right.
So that's what's going on there. That is the correct setting, the best audio available. You are getting the best audio available.
One would hope. Then again, based on how menus and settings go these days, it's always good to ask, because the best audio available might be, we're just going to give you 2-channel. Have either of us, Tom and Rob, had the chance to see any more movies in 70mm or full 70mm IMAX? The Phantom Thread, which I have never heard of, and what is that?
It's Oscar nominated. It's Daniel Day-Lewis as a
that's
Taylor.
why. Yep, you lost me at Daniel Day-Lewis. I like him. She's a fantastic actor. I know he passed away recently, so I'm not.
No, he didn't pass away.
Did he die?
No, he retired.
That's the same thing.
It's his last movie.
Anyways, that's why I thought he was dead, because they were like, oh, he's gone forever from the movies. So I was like, oh, he must be dead. Okay, well, I'm glad he's not dead, because then I can talk bad about him. But he's a fantastic actor, and he's like really gets into his roles or whatever. I'm sure we're going to find out some horrible things about him once people start talking. I hope not, but it just seems to be the way. But I don't think he's ever been in a movie I wanted to see. I just don't think he's
There
ever
Will
been.
Be Blood was really good. Lincoln was good.
Didn't see Lincoln. Didn't see There Will Be Blood even when it was on
that's
Netflix.
A really good movie.
I know. The Last of the Mohicans, my parents loved that movie. He was in that. And
Going all the way back, My Left Foot.
Didn't see that either. I'm sorry.
Missing out.
I'm not saying you're not right, okay? I'm not saying you're not right. What I'm saying is that I don't like to see movies that... Every movie that he's ever been in, when I saw the preview for it, I was like, ugh. That just looks like it's going to be drama. There's going to be emotions. Like, not nearly enough guns. Anyways, the Phantom Thread was shown in 70mm, and Carl thought the presentation looked stunning and wonderful. What are our thoughts on the continued viability of large format? Will digital projection ever look that good?
Well, I think it's pretty close already, because people who saw Dunkirk in the laser IMAX presentation...
Yeah. I have a real hard time whenever somebody's like, okay, well, digital will never be as good as analog. I kind of have a problem with that from a technological standpoint. It will surpass.
Yeah,
it will. It just will.
The laser IMAX presentation of Dunkirk, that stood up and I would say surpassed the 70mm film version. It's got higher contrast, if nothing else. So yeah, the digital part, it definitely can look as good. I haven't seen any more.
I don't know that I've ever seen. I may have seen some. I know I've seen like the IMAX or movies in IMAX, and I've seen IMAX movies back when IMAX was like only in amusement parks.
Sure, yeah.
You know, Marriott's Great America was my first one I ever saw. So I don't know. I'm sure it looks stunning, but again, like I said,
I think large format has a decent chance of surviving, in fact, because there's so much talk about how movie theaters, like giant cineplexes that have 20 plus screens, they're starting to struggle, which means that being more of an event might be one way to survive.
I agree with that. I think that, and I think we've talked about this a couple of times before in the podcast, but one of the things I think that we're going to see with these cinemas is that we're going to see them tailor a little bit more. There's always going to be the smaller theaters. There's no reason why they have to get rid of all those things, because movies that have been playing for a little while, they can sell the seats for maybe a little bit cheaper. But the IMAX and the large and the D box, God help us, and the Dolby Atmos, they're trying to sell you a ticket to get you into this theater so that they can sell you $30 worth of popcorn. But I think that the one thing that you still can't really get at home without being completely over the top about it is that huge screen. Like I have a big screen, but it's nothing compared to IMAX. Just no matter what you do, nothing is not. It's just there is a 30-foot high screen in front of you.
Yeah.
Even though you're sitting far enough back that it's essentially to your eye about the same field of view that you get at home. There's just no getting around the fact that you're staring at a screen that's 30 feet high and 60
and for the
feet wide.
cinephiles, there's a dedicated group who are like, this is in 70mm film, so I'm gonna go see it. So I don't see it being a huge market, but for that dedicated crowd, I can see it continuing and being popular enough to keep it viable.
I do too, and I think when you go to the movies and you want to see something, and I mean, as you may hate these movies, but the Star Wars movies coming out every year, the Marvel movies that are coming out, these are things that are driving people back to the movie theaters, in my opinion. Not that movies were ever really struggling, but we were, when I was growing up, and a lot of us that are listening to this podcast were growing up, there would be a movie that would come out, but sequels weren't really a thing. You would wait. You would see the previews. You would go to see the movie, and then it would either be terrible, which most of the time it was, or it would be lackluster, which the other most of the time it was. But every once in a while there'd be a great one, and then there would be that word of mouth, and you would go out there and you would see it. Now there's such hype and stuff around these movies that we're seeing, and I mean, Rotten Tomatoes is a great resource that. When you want to go out and see this movie, you are already like way excited about it. You know you're going to like it. You know what you're getting yourself into. And you don't want to just see it. You want to experience it. And I think that's what IMAX and these large formats really have going for them, is it ups it to the next level. Now, I still think that movie theaters and stuff are going to have to make some real changes in the coming years. And I think VR is a way that they can differentiate themselves. They may never happen. You may never find like a room of VR, which is what I think they're going to do. They're going to take these theaters, they're going to chop them up, and they're going to take some of the smaller rooms, and they're going to turn them into VR rooms. And I think that would be a fantastic idea, but we'll see if that ever happens. Now, we've got 4 minutes left and 1 question left on the question list. So we're going to try to get through the last one, and for the first time in a couple of years, a couple of years, we'll actually get through all our questions. Mike. To start, Mike's number one concern is his primary home theater area. He'll be using a Marantz SR6011 to drive a 5.2.4 system, and he'll have a 4K HDR TV with Dolby Vision. He wants the best audio and video quality in the theater. That matters more than everything else he's about to ask. Great. With that said, he also wants to have a second TV in another part of his basement. The second TV is roughly 50 feet away. He wants something inexpensive, so it might even be 1080p. You're not going to get 1080p. It's almost impossible to find. The audio for the second TV isn't important either. It just might be the TV's built-in speakers. But he would like to be able to have the same source playing in the theater and on the second TV at the same time. His Marantz XC11 offers a Zone 2 HDMI output, but can he have 4K HDR with Atmos playing in his theater while the second TV plays 1080p with a 2-channel sound, or will everything get down and mixed to 1080p and 2-channel? Should he get HD Fury to solve this? If so, what model?
So this is what I tried in my own setup.
Okay, because I was going to say, it seems like it should work without, I mean, there usually is 6011. How old is that?
That's just last year.
So it should have it has dual outputs, right? It has dual outputs, and it has a Zone 2 as well?
Yes,
dual HDMI outputs.
It has 2 mirrored outputs plus a separate Zone 2, which could show a different source from the main theater, or could be used to show the same source.
Well, it seems like the Zone 2 should work. Does it work? Did you test it?
So it will be what he asked. It will become lowest common denominator to both things. Yeah, because that's the only way.
Oh, it's terrible.
The source can only send one signal, so it has to send a signal that's compatible with both. If all you have is the AV receiver with its main zone output and its Zone 2 output, what you get in that scenario, so I have my LG OLED, and then I also have a 1080p SDR TV. So connecting that, both end up getting 1080p, and both So I have my Atmos receiver. In my case, it's an SR7010, but I have my Atmos receiver and then just the built-in speakers of the 1080p TV, like what he described. Both end up getting a 2-channel stereo signal only. So you could solve the video side of this with an HD Fury linker, which is, I think, $170, something around that price point. Pricey. $180. So the HD Fury linker could solve the video side of this, because what that will do is it'll change HDCP 2.2 into HDCP 1.4, and it will take a 4K HDR signal and downscale it to 1080p. So that means your source device would see the two displays as both being 4K HDR, right. HDCP 2.2, but the linker is then going to down convert all of that to the stuff that your 1080p TV could understand. That works for the video. It doesn't work for the audio. The audio is still going to end up being 2-channel only, because even through the HDR Fury linker, it has to be a signal that is compatible, and 2-channel is all that the 1080p TV is going to be able to accept. So, I have 2 solutions for you.
Okay.
Number 1, you could get the 1080p TV with the HDR Fury linker.
Yeah.
And you would have to add an AV receiver, one that can decode Atmos. No, it doesn't have to be very expensive. There are some pretty inexpensive receivers that can decode Atmos. All that matters is that Atmos can be sent to both zones. And there is something waiting to decode Atmos at both ends. So you could get the least expensive. The one I might recommend would be Yamaha's RX-V383. It doesn't actually even decode Atmos, but it doesn't have to. It can decode Dolby True HD, which is good enough. You just have to be able to send the Dolby True HD bit stream to both rooms. It'll function. It'll work. So the RX-V383 is like $200, and it can actually even pass through Dolby Vision. So there's no problem with that.
He's not going to get a 1080p TV, though.
Well, that's the other one. Instead of getting the HD Fury linker, you could get a Vizio M series or a TCL P605, and that way both of your TVs could accept Dolby Vision. They'll both accept 4K and HDR. You would still need the AV receiver, though, for the audio side of this, because if all you're using is the TV's built-in speakers, your main zone is going to get down mixed to 2-channel. That's what's going to happen. So you actually need an AV receiver.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Yeah, you're not going to find a 1080p TV anyways, and I think that with the prices what they are, $500 for a, I mean the
$180 that would have gone to the HD Fury, you can repurpose that to get the AV receiver.
Right.
And then if you just get a 4K Dolby Vision TV like a Vizio M series, which are so affordable now, then it's all taken care of. You don't have to worry. You don't need the HD Fury anymore.
So with the second TV being 50 feet away, he was thinking he'd run Cat cable. But which Cat cable should he run? Cat 6, Cat 6A, and should he run 2 cables or 1? And is HDMI to Cat cable setup even the right solution for his needs? What should he run? Isn't the Redmere optical solution good for this?
Up to 50 feet. So is it more than 50 feet?
Yeah, it really is. It more than 50 feet? Because if it's like 50 feet but really like 60, or is it like 50 feet but it's like 35 or 40?
So Monoprice actually does have so it's an active HDMI cable.
Right.
So it's got the little powered chip built into it. But they have one now that does work for up to 60 feet with full 18 gigabits and HDCP 2.2. So it's got all the stuff at up to 60 feet. That cable at the 60-foot length does cost $75, but I don't think that's that bad.
That's not that bad.
For a 60-foot HDMI cable, $75 to do all the things you need to do.
That's not that bad.
I think that's cheaper than getting the HDMI to Ethernet adapters.
Those adapters are going to be a couple $100 easy.
Yeah.
Last time I was looking at those things. Now, granted, this was when HDMI first came out. They were like $300 for a box. I'm assuming they've come down in price since then. this is actually a really easy answer here. And the red mirror cables are optical. They are powered.
No, they're not optical.
Not optical?
Red mirror cables are copper, but they're active.
Okay, but they're active.
powered.
That's right.
So yeah, if it's 50 feet or less, you can use their Cabernet 50-foot cable, which is $45. That'll get the job done. Or if you do need to go a little bit more than 50 feet and the 60-foot cable would work, then you'll want to step up to their $75 ones. So that's Monoprice. We'll have the links for those. Now, you could get Monoprice's fiber optic HDMI cable as well.
That's going to be like a couple $100, isn't it?
But that's now you're looking at $180.
Yeah.
So it's not really necessary. $75 will definitely get the job done here. What I would really recommend, though, because he was saying one of the reasons he's asking is he does actually have sort of the walls open, so he's running wires right now. Run it in a conduit.
Yeah.
Because HDMI 2.1 at some point in the future, you're going to need a 48 gigabit per second cable, and these ones ain't going to do it. So run it in a conduit. But I would suggest, instead of bothering with CAT conversions, category cable conversions, Ethernet cables, instead of bothering with that, do it with an HDMI cable, because $75, not too bad.
Yeah. All right, that's our questions. We want to thank our patrons, all 53 of them, including Patrick, for supporting the podcast financially. We also want to thank Heath, Robert, Justin, and all of our new YouTube subscribers for supporting the podcast. Heath talked us up to Soundproofing Company. Robert and Justin both talked to SVS for us. So thank you guys.
Yeah, huge thanks to our 53 patrons. Patrick, thanks for signing up. Heath, Robert, Justin, thanks so much for supporting the podcast, talking us up to SVS and Soundproofing Company. And big thanks to the folks who've newly signed up at YouTube and hoping for, 300 some odd more? That would put us over our threshold.
Just need everybody who's did it this week to make 3 new email accounts.
That's right.
And subscribe to our podcast. I hate doing this. If it were up to me, we wouldn't do this.
No.
Wouldn't do it at all.
No. But since it isn't costing anybody any money, and it would help us out, and there are people who are like, I wish I could help you out, but I don't have money to give to you right now. I'm like, there you go. A few clicks on YouTube, you've really helped us out. So I don't mind asking.
I agree. All right, to get your questions answered on this podcast, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. We are now currently out of questions. It's not true.
We got one. We got one that came in via email today.
Yeah. So this is your big chance to get answers in the very next podcast. So give us an email. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.